Hey everyone, Mr. Voikin here. This is Unit 4.1.3, and we're just going to continue with the algebra and get into some more complex equations. But first, let's review last day's lesson. And again, this will be very similar to the quiz at the end of the class, so you're going to make sure that you understand these concepts. Okay, number 1 says x minus 14 equals negative 5. And again, the important thing is that the left side equals the right side and that we have a variable on one side and basically a number on the other side. So in this case, what I want to do is get rid of the 14 by adding 14. And to keep it equal, I need to do it to both sides. It cancels on the left. And what we end up with is x equals 9. Okay, number 2, I have a negative x divided by 8. And if I'm dividing by 8, I want to do the inverse operation and multiply both sides by 8. The 8's cancel, and I have a negative x equals 56. However, I don't want a negative x value. I want an x value, so I can just convert it by changing the signs of both of these, which is just dividing both sides by negative 1. So I end up with x equals negative 56, not negative x equals positive 56. This is the preferred form, the correct answer. Okay, and the last question, number 3, is a two-step equation. In this case, I'm going to try and get rid of that 6 first. So I need to minus 6. And if I do it to the left, I'm going to do it to the right. It cancels right here. So on the left, I've got a negative 3x still, and that's going to equal negative 9 minus 6, which is negative 15. Now, to separate the negative 3 from the x, because it is a negative 3 times x, I'm going to do the opposite, which is divide by that negative 3. The 3's cancel again, and I have x equals 5. Okay, so this is very similar to the quiz that you're going to have. So try these questions right now. Pause the video and come back to check your answers. All right, you should have got 24 for the first one. T equals 24. Number 2, t equals 3. And the last one should be t equals 2. If you didn't get those answers, take a look at my work and try and figure out what you did wrong. Okay, like I said, this lesson right here, we're going to look at more complex equations. These are basically multi-step equations. So let's start off with number 1. You can see we've got 8 plus 3x inside the brackets, and we're multiplying that by 6. And we want to deal with that number that's outside of those brackets first, and because it's 6 times that bracket, we're going to divide both sides by 6. Cancel our 6's, and now we're left with 8 plus 3x equals 20. Okay, so we're basically back to a two-step equation like we had in lesson 1.2. So I just need to follow the steps that we did in that lesson. I'm going to subtract 8 from both sides first. I'm left with 3x equals 12, and finally divide both sides by 3 so that I have x equals 4. Okay, question number 2. I've got a negative 4x plus 11, and that is going to equal a negative 8x plus 43. So remember what I was telling you, our goal is to get variables on one side and numbers on the other side. But in this case, you can see I've got variables on both sides and numbers on both sides. So we just need to move them back and forth. So let's begin by moving that negative 8x over to the other side. So if I want to move it to the other side, I'm going to add 8x because I want to get rid of it. Okay, so if I add 8x to one side, I'm going to add 8x to the other side. On the left, or sorry, on the right, negative 8x and positive 8x cancel. And on the left, I have a 8 minus 4, which is going to be 4x. So I've done that work right there. Now I have that 11 that I don't want to be on the left side. I only want variables over there. So I need to get rid of it. So what am I going to do? The inverse operation, minus 11. Whatever I do to one side, I do to the other side. The 11s will cancel, and that is going to equal, so 4x is going to equal 43 minus 11, which is going to be 32. So I've done that work right there, and now I'm down to a one-step equation where I'm going to divide both sides by 4, cancel the 4, and I have an answer of x equals 8. Okay, let's move on to question number 3. So in this case, we've seen something similar to this before. I've got a 5x plus 6 over 3. In the previous lesson, we just had an x plus 6 over 3. So it's just one more step, but I still need to multiply both sides by 3 at first to get rid of that 3 that's in the denominator. That leaves me with 5x plus 6 equals negative 9. Now I need to get rid of the 6 by subtracting 6 from both sides, and I have 5x equals negative 9, and negative 6 is negative 15. And finally, divide both sides by 5 to isolate that x, and I get x equals negative 3. Okay, now let's take a look at the last question, question number 4. And again, looks very similar to what we've done before. There's just one more number in there, and basically I have a set of brackets and the number 6 on the outside. So we've got to get rid of that number 6 on the outside. Because it's 6 times the brackets, I'm going to divide both sides by 6. That will cancel. I'm left with an x over 4 plus 5 equaling negative 2. So x over 4 is x divided by 4, but because the 4 is not also under the 5, I want to get rid of that 5 first by subtracting 5 again from both sides, leaving me with x over 4 equals, in this case, a negative 7. And finally, because it is x divided by 4, I'll multiply both sides by 4, isolating that x and giving us an answer of x equals negative 28. Okay, so don't forget that you can perform checks by substitution, taking the value of the x, putting it back into the original equation, and making sure that the equation is balanced, that the left equals the right. Okay, I have 4 questions for you to try, so pause the video, give those a shot, and come back and see how you did. Okay, so these multi-step questions can be a little bit complex, but with some practice, you should get proficient with them. So let's take a look at the answers for question number 1. You should have got t equals 3. For question number 2, you should have got t equals 5. For question number 3, you should get t equals negative 10. And finally, for the last question, number 4, you should have got t equals negative 21. So double check your work and try some substitution and figure out where you're doing things right and where you're doing things wrong. Okay, for the last part of this lesson, we're going to look at a few word problems, or 2 word problems. So let's just break these down, draw them out, and create an algebraic equation to solve for an unknown variable. So we have a rectangle, and it says that the length is 4 more. So the length is 4 more than the width. So if we assume that, the long part is the length and the short part is the width, right here we can now start to visualize what's happening. It says the perimeter is 32. So the perimeter, remember, is the distance all the way around this thing. So I've also got this information. The perimeter is 32. Don't forget we have units right now as well. And the question is asking us what is the length and what is the width. Okay, so remember that perimeter is going to equal sort of length plus width plus width. So it says right here the length is 4 more than the width. So we don't want two different variables. I don't want an L and a W. So let's just say I call the width x. The length is 4 more. So that means the length would be x plus 4. It's 4 more than the width. The width is x. The length is 4 more than x, so x plus 4. And the perimeter is 32. So I can basically just plop those values into these variables that are in this equation that we created right here. So let's do that. P is a value of 32. L is x plus 4 plus L, which is x plus 4, plus W, which is just x, plus W, which is just x. So right now we just have to gather all these like terms. So 32 on the left equals 1, 2, 3, 4 x's. So I got 4 x's, and I've got a 4 plus a 4, which is plus 8. Okay, so in this case, we've got our variable on the right and a number already on the left, so I'll keep the variable on the right. It's not a hard set rule that the variable has to be on the left, it's just a little bit more standard. So in this case, I will minus 8 from both sides, canceling the 8 here, and we end up with a 4x on this side equals 24. Now, truthfully, you can just flip those if you want to. If you're used to having 4x on this side, you could just say it equals 24 and ignore that one right there. And at this point, we're down to something that we know how to do. Just divide both sides by 4 to isolate that x, and we end up with x equals 6. Okay, so how do I know I'm right? Well, if x is 6, x is the width, that means that we have a value of 6 on this side, 6 on this side, and the length would be 6 plus 4, which is 10 and 10. And let's add those together. So 6 plus 6 is 12, plus 10 is 22, plus another 10 is 32, which is the perimeter that we were given, so we know that we're correct. Okay, so I want you to try the same thing, but on the example to the right. Okay, so the question is very similar. The only thing that's different is the setup of the length and the width. So it says it's 3 less than 5 times the width. So if I make the width a value of x, this will be 5 times the x minus that 3. And then we just do the same work that we did in the last one and calculate our x, check to make sure our values are correct. And what I forgot to do in the original one was to write down a word response and answer the question. So the question is, what is the length and the width? And the answer is the length is 17 meters and the width is 4 meters. Okay, so our last question, another word question, and it's basically going to be the same thing. Remember, we're creating an algebraic equation to solve for an unknown variable. So let's take a look at what it says. We got 2 theaters, theater A and theater B. So theater A holds 8 more people than B. So the best thing to do is just sort of draw something out. Go, here is our theater A, and here is our theater B. And A holds 8 more than B. So remember what we did in the last one. I'll make B equal X, and if A holds 8 more, this would be X plus the 8. There's 8 more than B. Okay, and it says when both theaters are full, there are 112 people. So when I add all the people in both, we have a total of 112. Okay, and the question is asking us how many people are in theater B. So all I really need to do is calculate what B is. So let's lay this out. It's just going to be the A, which is X plus 8, plus the B, which is just X, and that should equal 112. So on the left-hand side, we've got some gathering of like terms first. So X and X is 2X plus 8 equals 112. Now we're down to a two-step equation, and I'm going to subtract 8 from both sides, leaving us with 2x equals 104. And then I want to divide both sides by 2. Whoop, time to get up. And we have x equals 52. Okay, so to double check that I'm right, I know that B is going to be 52. And A is going to be 8 more, which would be 52 plus 8, which is 60. Is 60 plus 52 equal to 112? Yes, it is. So I know we're correct. And don't forget, we need to answer the question that is being posed to us. How many people are in theater B? And the answer is there are 52 people in theater B. Okay, so this definitely would be up there on our level 6, 7 type questions. So give it a shot, the question on the right, and pause the video, come back and see how you did, and then we'll move on to the questions in the textbook. Okay, so here is the work and the answer for the last question. So in this case, we're going to say Sammy has X marbles, and if Sammy has X marbles, Jimmy has 4 less, so it would be X minus 4. In total, there are 60 marbles between the two of them. So we're going to add those together, do the work, and we end up with X equals 32, which would be the number of marbles that Sammy has. So subtract 4, Jimmy has 28. Add those two together, it equals 60. We know that the work is correct at this point, and we provide a word response to our question. Okay, there you go. Hopefully you've had some success with this, and we'll see you in class.